Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. And if you're already a subscriber to the channel, welcome back. Thank you for joining me in another video. And if you're not a subscriber to the channel, welcome to the channel. If this is your first time, consider subscribing to the channel where we talk all things engineering, technology, and finance on the channel. And we use that information to make our lives better than what it is today. So if that's something that you're interested in, go ahead and hit the like button for the video. Also, don't forget to subscribe and share it with a friend, family member. As I always say, we don't want to hoard the knowledge and we want everyone to learn. So it seems like a lot of my videos I've been walking lately. You obviously want to stay healthy. Plus I got this step challenge I'm trying to win. We'll see if I get there. So a couple days ago, I had a session where I reached out to another colleague of mine who's in the technology space. He's a cybersecurity manager. So I reached out to my friend Brandon and I asked Brandon if he could join me on a call with several other folks who are interested in cybersecurity. But of course, if you saw my previous video, part 1 of cybersecurity, and if you haven't seen that video, I'm going to put a link in the description below so that way you can check it out. But I had a colleague of mine who did part 1, and he gave his perspective on what it's like to be in cybersecurity, but for his industry. And so what I wanted to do is I wanted to bring my other friend and my other colleague who's in a totally different industry, and he's in the pharmaceutical industry. And I wanted to bring him on so that way he can talk about his experiences, what it was like for him to make it to the position that he's at today, how are things in the pharmaceutical industry. So it gives folks different perspectives as to what can you expect if you were to join or pursue this path in cybersecurity. So the folks that joined the call, of course, all interested in cybersecurity, they had a bunch of great questions. And I thought it'd be very, very selfish of me if I were to hold that video and not share it with the world. And I think it's an incredible piece of information where you guys can watch the conversations that we were having and take all the little nuggets that they were learning from Brandon, and hopefully you can take those pieces of information and apply it for yourselves, so that way you can transform and change your life if a career in tech or cybersecurity is the route that you want to go. So I'm going to play the video for you guys now. Hopefully you enjoy it, and I'll see you guys on the other side of the video.
Just a question.
Yes.
Are you going to explain why you have baby aliens floating behind you once you record?
Yes. So these are my good friends here. So since in the interest of cybersecurity, they're watching the ship right now and they're making sure that everything is locked down so that way, things don't go haywire over here. In the interest of time, let's jump over to my good friend Brandon over here. I am going to do a little intro about him. My good friend Brandon here, he's an information technology security manager, and it's at Endo Pharmaceuticals. And he's responsible for managing a variety of cybersecurity solutions and enhancing overall security posture daily. So a little tidbit about Brandon. He was born in Jamaica on the West Coast, and he spent 18 years of his life growing up there. So he attended a technical school, high school, and he immediately, after receiving his diploma, enrolled in a trade school where he practiced becoming a residential electrician. Very interesting path here, so we're going to continue with that. And he had an early interest in computer and electronics. So awesome, Brandon, just like me. And it was not long after completing the trade school that he found himself working as a PC technician in his local town. And he saw himself having a career in information technology at an early stage, which eventually led him to move to the United States to further his study. And the interesting thing is he had no information on where to begin, so he was a little bit lost on how to get started. But he enrolled in Burlington Community College, and he completed his associate degree in computer networking. And at that point, he learned about the various paths within information technology, and he decided to pursue his path in cybersecurity. And so his cybersecurity journey started at Drexel in 2013, and after that he landed his first information technology focused role at the same time within TD Bank. And then after spending a few years in a role that was a support analyst, he served a bunch of different TD locations globally. He then decided to complete his bachelor's degree in cybersecurity at Drexel, and he accepted his he accepted his first position as a cybersecurity focused role in the Universal Healthcare Services. And then over time, he continued to perfect his skills, and he's utilizing those skills now in his new role. And he's also acquired a lot of industry certifications, so he'll talk a little bit about what those are. And if you want to learn anything more about that process of how he went about it and what are those certs or anything in general, you can ask him any of those questions. And also keep in mind too that he decided to pursue a master's in cybersecurity from Georgia Tech. So he also has that in his belt as well. So if you guys are interested in any of these things, now's your opportunity to learn from this great resume that he has. So I will turn it over to my friend Brandon, and he will talk about anything that I may have missed. And then after that, you guys can ask any questions popcorn style if you like. So, Brandon, the floor is yours.
Awesome. Thanks for that well put together intro there. Definitely appreciate it. So yeah, he pretty much opened up my storybook there for all of you. Um, it's been a pretty long journey, getting to where I'm at here. There's I've learned a lot. There's been lots of mistakes, lots of lessons learned along the way. So I take all of that to my advantage at the end of the day, um, to really you carve out my career path and where I'm at right now. So it's one of the things I would always just put out there, even before we start throwing questions, is the key thing I've learned, is the sooner you get started in this, you know, the better it helps you out in the end. Um, if you if you're here right now, you have way more information than I had. Like 8 years ago. So I would say like you're already one step ahead in that respect. So the fact that you had this opportunity to gather all this this information going forward, it's gonna really benefit you in the short run. So with that said, I wanted to get an idea from you guys, the kind of industry that you're thinking about, or maybe you're currently in, and sort of how you want to either pivot from there into the cybersecurity space, or if you're just starting off brand new, like what's your idea of your first cybersecurity role or your first cybersecurity job? Like what are you expecting for that currently with the information that you have so far? So those are just some of the things I want you to kind of think about, as we kick off any questions that you want to throw out there.
Don't be afraid to answer. Somebody can come off mute and just say, "Hey, look, this is where I'm at, what I'm looking to do." So it'll only help him guide you as to where where's the path that you need to take if this is the path you want to take.
Hey, Brandon, it's JC. I'll go ahead and shoot first.
Sure.
So yeah, as Lewis told you before, I'm pretty much new to the IT world, so I'm learning from pretty much scratch. Right now, currently, I'm taking a Coursera course with a Google Professional IT certification, just to get a good foundation on what the tech world is like. So just learning about, like the OSI layers, the 5 layers as well, the TCP, IP, and all these new terms that I'm learning. I'm currently interested in more on the defensive side of cybersecurity, to become an analyst. So that's pretty much where my head is geared towards to. Um, what would be, I guess, your suggestion to go into that route? Is there like a specific, should I concentrate myself in a specific type of thing in cybersecurity? Because I know cybersecurity is pretty broad. Like, what are the most specific things in cybersecurity can I just focus on that will target to that specific area to become like an analyst or so and such?
All right, cool. So, again, first thing you touched on there, you're already looking for your specific area, right? That that was one of the mistakes I made when I started out, because not having so much information, right? I wasn't sure which direction I wanted to go with it. So, um, before even learning about being an analyst, I was you pen testing was one of the areas that piqued my interest first in the cybersecurity space. So I initially started to gear myself towards that. I did web application testing, web dev. Kind of got my feet wet in that area. And what I was missing at that point is that even just to get to a pen tester, right? You got to cover like network and stuff. Like you mentioned, like the OSI, layer. Those are all core fundamental things that I would say almost anybody who is getting into cybersecurity, at some point you're gonna come across it. So, um, the fact that you're doing that, you're already, covering one of the tracks that you're gonna have to do, regardless. So, with something like an analyst, um, I found that that's more of like a rounded, like a rounded role in cybersecurity. So you'll not just know the networking aspect to it, right? Um, it might come down to where you're analyst at a company, you're really like the cybersecurity expert, and it all depends on the size of the company too. So an analyst, I kind of compare that to when I was doing like a help desk. Right? I used to do some help desk work at a TV bank, and if when you're doing like a help desk type of role, you find that you're talking to a variety of customers for a variety of issues, right? First, they have many different scripted, playbooks that you go through to help work through issues, but it could be anywhere from you're figuring out, a virus on the computer to like a printer broken. And so I compare an analyst to that in the cybersecurity space to where you could be dealing with like a phishing email one day and then literally trying to, decipher, what data got stolen off the network the next day, right? So with an analyst, I would say, again, you're covering the basics, right? And I find that the networking side of it is, getting a good grip on that early will give you a really strong foundation going in. And then once you do that, one thing that helps me is to then, expand my knowledge outside of that into things like incident response, for example. A lot of analysts are going to end up doing incident response, part of their role. I would say almost any analyst role in any company role, that might be one of the things that you're going to find yourself doing. So things like incident response, you're touching on application security, and you don't have to at this stage go too deep into it. So not necessarily like you're writing out code or anything. But what I found is helpful to at least start getting familiar with those, right? So it could be something like spin up a Ubuntu machine, figure out how to go out and YouTube is your resource of all resources, right? It'll show you how to maybe set up a virtual machine, what they call it, and that's like your practice area, right? I found that helpful because then a lot of the things that you end up doing as an analyst, you can explore those inside an environment like that. It's really more like a really explorative type of role. Um, I would kind of sum it up in that way because again, you're not just focused on one thing as an analyst. You're almost again like an expert or SME in some sense if you're an analyst. Because as an analyst, you'll be working with engineers, you'll be working with architects, right? And then on the other side, you could be working with like, a manager or even a CISO, depending on the size of your company. So that work and just the fundamentals of, systems. Uh, and in this day and age, cloud, right? Anything cloud related, right? Like one of the AWS cloud basics essentials. Those would be other key entry points, at the kind of stage that you're at. And that will just start to expand your knowledge on the different areas. So, not focusing on one, but definitely get the foundation where you're at right now as a starting point, and then, just expand your knowledge altogether. So, like, I think like the OSI, you can think of it as you're going pretty deep, but not really broad. Right? You're going to multiple different levels, but I think from what I recall, being like the security class, right? They teach you like a few topics in each layer, right? Like you don't go too broad, like encryption or something like that.
Yeah.
But it's like you're going really deep, but not too broad. And that's the kind of thinking you want to have as an analyst going in. You got to know a little bit about a lot, but not necessarily at that stage. You have to be like the expert in one field, because then you have to be really focused once you get to that point, right? But yeah, I think you're on the right foot. Getting the essentials right, and then from there you can start and expand your knowledge around that to broaden your scope.
Okay. Awesome.
So
No.
Brandon, sorry to JC, did you have an additional question?
No.
All right. Brandon, you talked a little bit about the defense side, the offense side. So for folks that may not know, what side to start in, what are some good tips and tricks that you can recommend to say, hey, look at this for the defense, and hey, look at this for the offense, and then it'll give you an inkling of what side to focus on because it's so much information, right? So what tips and tricks
Yeah.
can you recommend for that?
I would say for that, it's like, what piques your interest the most in that respect? Um, do you find yourself as somebody who you want to be analytical in your approach? Like very detail oriented. Are you the type to, if you want to test things and blow things up, um, I would say if you can, figure out which of those, approaches or which of those things like pique your interest the most, then that will tell you if you want to be more a defensive or an offensive side. And just to explain those a little bit, right? So again, when I started out, right, pen test pen testing is one of the first things that got my attention. And pen test is considered an offensive side of cybersecurity. So like think about pen test as like you're simulating, the hacker trying to get into the network, right? You're simulating, a social engineer trying to steal some data and pretend to be somebody, right? Um, if that's something that you find yourself doing, or if you find that interesting, then definitely that's like an offensive approach. If on the other side you're the person inside the company trying to protect it from the hacker, or like you want to come up with policies to put in place and procedures to put in place to you know prevent these attacks, Maybe you can come up with technical solutions also to put in place to prevent these type of attacks. So now you're playing defense, right? Um, I would say that it's usually very different people who end up taking an offensive approach versus defensive approach. If you're going with like the pen test attacker route, right? To say that, I usually find it that those are people who are interested in like your scripting, maybe you're um, looking for bounty, right? For vulnerabilities. You're the type who is like very interested in picking something apart, seeing how it works underneath, and then finding ways to break it. If you're the type that says, okay, I just want to make sure that this thing is as safe as possible, that it cannot be broken, then you're going to find yourself on the other side of that table, the defensive side of that table.
Awesome. I have another question. Well,
Yeah.
what's the, I mean, in your opinion, what's the gap between somebody that goes for a cybersecurity bootcamp certificate and to somebody that goes the university route to get, let's say, a bachelor's degree in cybersecurity? Like, what's the gap that you see in there, like career wise, and also the pay gap? Is it like a big difference, or
So I would say, um, if especially if you're just starting out, right? I would say that there's almost there's a point where you can get to where you want as like an entry level without necessarily going through an entire boot camp or even say completing a degree. I would say that, and I can give you examples based on the approach that I took because I kind of did a little bit of both, right? So when I started out, right, I landed my first, like I said, a help desk role, right? And I was, just starting out my bachelor's at that point. So again, didn't have a completed degree, but doing the fundamentals like we're doing right now, that gave me enough to start out as as like a help desk analyst or something. And it's really those fundamentals that really start opening up the opportunities then to maybe branching off into different areas. Um, One of the things that did for me is right, just being a help desk analyst um, at TD Bank when I was doing that. Even though it wasn't say necessarily a cybersecurity specific role at the time, just general IT, but that even gave me the opportunity to network with the CISO at TD Bank, and that's where I could then learn about, oh, there's this whole other team that's not help desk, and they're called the cybersecurity guys, and they're like in the background doing all this stuff that we don't really see on a day-to-day basis. So I would say that you know for me, the boot I did for my pen test, I did do a boot camp for my pen test. And that was really company driven. That's one reason why I went ahead and took it, right? Because at that point, again, I showed interest in pen tests, and you should go take a shot at this. Um, I already wanted to do it anyway. I was going to do it regardless. Um, but I would say at that point, I had a lot of colleagues who didn't have a bachelor's degree in cybersecurity, and we were all working on the same team. We were all doing similar things, right? We collaborated together. So I wouldn't put a hard stop on say, I need that degree before I can, I can do what I need to do. Um, it's definitely going to get you to the next step once you get that degree. But I wouldn't let that be the deciding factor into say when you start, or necessarily how you start. Um, Now, as far as like the pay gap, that's where it might start to matter. And I think this all again comes down to preferences based on the company. Because nowadays that's even changing. Right? There's these companies like Google is starting to like not go hard on okay, you gotta have a degree for a certain a certain role. You have the experience, right? And you self study for your cert, right? That's equivalent, of somebody who maybe went to a 4 year college and they came out with the same knowledge, right? So at the end of the day, you go to 4 year university and you come out and then everybody's still talking about cert. So now you're pretty much the way I saw it is like the college is like preparing me for the certifications that I'm then going to end up you know gaining as part of my recognition in that. And that's going to get the recognition I need, the attention that I need from the employers that I go to. So it's going to be a difference, yes, in the pay gap. And I would say that's really when you're just starting out, but I wouldn't let that stop you from starting. Because again, the sooner you get in there, this field is so flexible. Like you could start tomorrow and you're in a role for like 6 months, and that's literally all you need before you go to the next one. Like I like the next level up, because this field is so fast, it's so rapid. You can learn so much in a year, right? And I'm like comparing that to any other degree, right? And I feel like because it's so fast paced, it's such an agile, field that you can learn so much in 1 year. You can go from a zero to hero in literally 1 year. I've seen people done that. So I wouldn't let that, really, swing your decision too much, but just keep that in mind.
Yeah, perfect.
Don't be shy. Ask your questions.
I do have a question, and that was a good set of questions, JC, but Alejandria had put something in the chat, so perhaps we can address that first, and then I'll ask my question.
Awesome.
Sure.
Yes. So Alejandria says, I'm currently getting my degree in cybersecurity where I can earn CompTIA certifications and more. I'm trying to pick a niche within cybersecurity.
Okay. Um, so So again, I think I would bring this back to like one of the first, first things I asked you, like where in cybersecurity, like what's your idea of like your perfect job in cybersecurity? And if that's still, at a point where you can't really describe it, then think about like what you like to do, right? As a skill, like what do you like to do? Are you the analytical type? Do you like to troubleshoot? Do you tinker with things? Me as a kid, I got like my first computer, I'd say like back in like 90, 98, 97, somewhere there, and had no idea how a computer works, right? This was like an old Pentium 2, if you guys familiar with that. So this is like a really old, it was like a compact. The name compact might be familiar. And like I was pulling that thing apart like every day, right? I smoked it a few times and somehow it still works, which is crazy. but
Hey,
but
Brandon, back then, actually, that was when like you can actually reverse polarities on the connectors and fry stuff. That's actually how I got into engineering, by the way. So interesting fun fact there that you mentioned.
yeah, exactly. The components were a lot bigger back then, right? So it was easier to see things that interest you. Um, but I started out with that, and that's how I started, having my niche in that sense to start tinkering with things. I pulled it apart. I got my first laptop. The first thing I did was pull it apart, even before I turned it on. Like, I just like wanted to see what's in there for some reason, right? So that I feel like that sort of drove my curiosity, um, from an early stage. Um, is wanting to see how things work on the inside. And when you get to cybersecurity, it's essentially the same thing. But now you're maybe working with software or a piece of code, an application that right? Um, WhatsApp, a lot of us are probably familiar with the WhatsApp, right? Or the messaging application, right? I recently wanted to see, my company had an interest in trying to figure out if you're able to, use that for data, which really you can, and it goes around a lot of the security controls that a company has. Firewall, if that term is familiar. Um, you can log into WhatsApp in your computer browser, right? And you can like just drag and drop a picture in there or a document, or literally anything, right? And that's one medium of transferring data. And there's certain laws that a company has to follow, which one, they have to know what's leaving and coming into the company. And so there's a lot of activity with WhatsApp. And of course, they couldn't tell what it's doing because it could just be messages from that, and that might not be harm, right? So, with trying to figure this out, I basically started capturing network packets of the actual data going back and forth, and I was able to tell, like, okay, whenever I dropped a picture in there, it went to a different link or a different domain, right? Versus if I just send a voice note, that was another one. Versus I send just a chat, there's another one. So like if I block a certain link or a certain domain, well, I can no longer send a picture in there, but the messaging still works, for example. So, and that's why, like going behind the scenes, like reversing, like backtracking, reversing engineering, the whole process to see how it works. And, that's just to say, like, I like that sort of approach to cybersecurity. And so that's what led me to, going from doing a pen test, the Security Plus, right? Um, my my graduate program actually went a lot into the technical aspect of cybersecurity. So it was a lot of hands-on, and that's the reason I picked the one I picked again. Could have been similar to picking another certification, right? But that's the route that I wanted to go because that's the kind of things that like interested me the most. Um, you might be the kind of person who says, okay, I'm really good with describing a process and documenting something. I'm really good at technical writing. That's a whole other ballgame that you could get into, right? So if you don't have a strong, say, hands-on technical background, you can still find yourself doing, documentation or certifications, or maybe you're reviewing security policies, right? Those are just different areas, and you can compare that with other jobs too. So if you have a person who might be a surgeon, where they're hands-on, right? Or on the other side, you could be a professor who's writing a PhD, and they discovered some new process of how to cure something, and so they're the person who will be contributing the literature in describing how to do this. On the other side, the surgeon is doing it in practice, right? So just think about those two things and maybe see what do you like the most, and that would give you a general direction of where you want to go.
So my background is accounting, and I was told that like being a SOC analyst was a natural kind of transition. But I was reading the description, and I fit more of the red team side of things, just personality wise. So I've been doing a lot of CTF classes and learning Linux and Python. What else would you kind of suggest in maybe going that route?
That's an interesting one. One of the first persons I worked with, he we came from an accounting background, and then he was one of the analysts I worked with at the time. Um, I would say there's no limitation to it, right? Um, First of all, there's really nothing that can, if you find yourself picking, a specific area that you might like, there's no limitation in learning that. Doing a CTF, you said, right? You're doing, yeah. So that's a pretty good place to start with, going that route. That's one of the things I did find myself. And although I didn't, end up becoming like say a pen tester, like a red team hacker or a blue team hacker or something like that, right? Just gaining enough of that knowledge helped me to build my defensive skills. Right? Um, so it sounds to me like you're already doing everything that I would have done when I was at that point too. I started out learning, some scripting languages. I started learning the network side of things, packet capture. Ended up doing like encryption. That might be something that you could find yourself, yeah, getting some hands on in, encryption. And the with red team, you might start to notice that you're going to run into other applications that besides Python, for example, like you might see things like with C or Java. So with the red team, I would say that the sooner you start exploring, stretching your knowledge on those two, um, it's weird. Like you learn like one or two programming languages, let's say like Python or JavaScript or something. But then once you get into like C and let's say like two others, like all of a sudden they start becoming easier to understand. It's like a interesting way how those work. Like so if you came from like no coding, which at one point I knew nothing about coding, right? I had to start from somewhere. I started, on Python myself too, and from Java back in the day. But once you start doing it, I would say start touching on the other ones as well, and you can start making those connections really soon. You start grasping them soon. So if you're looking for like a red team, something like a red team, you think would best fit. You're definitely on the right track there. Um, Maybe web application testing. A lot of things are going to be cloud based, so web application pen testing is one route. I'm sure you've probably seen those popping up. That's one way to go. Um, in in the industry, you'll find that a lot of the hands-on building a tool that you could probably do, or scripting a tool that you could probably do. Um, there's a lot of open source applications out there you can get your hands on for that. Um, I know V-Drive is one of them that we use, and that's for diverse engineering. Any application that you want to take a look at, something called Binary Ninja. And I'm just throwing out some terms, so like maybe if you want to go back and look at some of these. But those are some of the things that I found myself doing to sort of gain more knowledge in that area. Did that kind of touch on what you're expecting there?
Yeah.
And to your point, though, coming from an accounting background, I think being accountant means that you have a very orderly way of doing something, right? So I find that
I'm more of a rogue accountant, but no, that's a whole nother story.
I mean that might work totally in your favor, because again, I've had to manage a SIM. That's a security information event management system. And a lot of that I had to do is for auditing, right? So I had to like track down something that happened like 2 years ago, and then nobody can tell me the date or the time. So now I'm like in the needle of haystack trying to find another needle, right? So I think that all of that knowledge actually it goes to your benefit at the end of the day.
Okay, thank you.
I'll go unless Nicholas, you want to go.
He turned off his camera.
I'll ask my question after you.
Okay. So just a bit of my background and where I would like to take it. I started back in the day, help desk for a software as a service. The company itself did like website building. So through that, I learned coding, Java, CSS, and all that sort of fun stuff. So more of the front end of things. In recent times, I've been working on Python, R, all the trendy coding stuff, looking at more of the BI and data analytics pieces. All that being said, and I'm a member of the Science Writers Association here in Canada, although I haven't really practiced science writing or technical writing per se, but I've been exposed to, the opportunities that are there. My focus, though, stubbornly so, is healthcare. So the fact that you work for Endo Pharmaceuticals is very interesting to me. What I'd like to do is take all this kind of random knowledge that I have in the tech space and apply it to health tech, ideally not for software as a service, but software as a medical device, for example, or an application or a platform like a chatbot that's focused on patient care or patient advocacy. Not sure that I want to do cybersecurity per se, but I absolutely know that I'll be working with tech teams. So I'm not sure if C-suite, like a CTO, is going to be my role, but definitely like COO, CPO, maybe CMO, something in the C-suite or upper management levels that's going to be dealing with applying all the technology is where I would like to go. So that cybersecurity piece, especially for healthcare, as you know, because of privacy reasons, HIPAA in the States, we've got similar legislation here in Canada. It's definitely important to know. So I'm just wondering if you have any tips or advice, whether it's certs that you think maybe management or C-suite should have, or what someone who's looking for a management role should concentrate on when it comes to tech in the healthcare space.
Right.
Loaded question.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely interesting. An interesting background there. And this is one of the beauty of networking with folks, right? One of my really good friends, he's pretty much doing what you just described. And we worked together in my last company, my last job, and he wasn't on the cybersecurity team, but what he did was medical. He was like a medical device analyst, the application analyst, and he actually developed a lot of processes around. Uh, so the baby monitors, right, that they have in the hospital that used to monitor the heartbeat. He actually developed an application around that to send the nurses on the floor an alert whenever there's like a deviation away from what the reading should be, and then he can store that data and then further use it later down the road for analytics to then help maybe put that into a study to determine a certain type of abnormality might be occurring based on a certain data set of monitoring that they've recorded. So it sounds like you want to do something in that realm. Is kind of what I'm getting. Definitely, I would say like a medical device, you know, like a medical device manager, project manager, something in that space. It sounds to me like that's where you're trying to go. Um, as far as what you can do to prepare that, um, you mentioned pretty much uh, a lot of the good stuff so far. So I think you've been building up your profile. It sounds like you've building up your profile on this for a while now. I think at this point it's really again finding maybe what area that might be in, and then I would say again cybersecurity. So I would say finding someone who might have medical device experience. Um, I could pull some strings and give you some names as well. I might shoot those over to Liz. There's a professor of mine. He's actually one of the GE leaders in the Northeast in the U.S. He taught at Drexel, and now he's like the leader of like this entire East Coast GE because he does medical device applications for like 30 years or something. But it sounds like getting with networking with someone in that area might be what gives you the most exposure right now. They can tell you a lot more about that stuff, right? But from working with them, this is kind of what I've seen, because we do work side by side because we're security, they're doing applications. So at some point we got together and we're building a secure medical application, right? So you sounds like you already have a lot of the hands-on, at least the exposure to that experience. So that's definitely a plus going forward.
Okay, I appreciate the feedback, whether it's getting in touch with you or Louis, then we can certainly follow up. I want to make sure Nicholas has time to ask his question though. So I yield the floor.
Yeah, so real quick, just so everybody knows, we got about 5 minutes left. So, Nicholas, go away. The floor is yours, my friend.
Yeah, I just got a general question. Yeah, because I come from a graphic design background. As far as like cybersecurity, I wanted to focus on like the cloud computing side. Uh, what would you say like the day-to-day routines as far as like, well, first of all, what is the difference between cybersecurity and cloud computing if they're different? And what is the day-to-day of a cloud computing network? I guess per se person, like what does the day-to-day look like? And what can they do to show to, I guess, potential employers that they have that skill and preparing for like, let's say interviews and stuff like that?
Well, since you mentioned cloud, I can tell you if you got any Microsoft Cloud cert related or AWS related certifications, then they'll be looking at you like they'll be calling you right away most likely, because that's in such a high demand right now. The, there's so I wouldn't say there's a difference, or I wouldn't say there's a difference at least like comparing cloud and cybersecurity, because you know cloud is cloud needs needs cybersecurity as well, right? Before cloud, it was on-prem, the term that they used to call it, and that's like me having a computer sitting on my desk, and I have a game running on my hard drive, and I stream the game from that hard drive. Or now I can purchase, that CPU on Amazon and put the game there, and then now it's cloud, right? It's really just where the data lives. So it doesn't matter where the data goes, it still requires the same amount of security, the same amount of attention, right? So, um, you know, looking at you should approach cloud the same way you would do anything else, right? In that respect, um, it's just a matter of where it's going, how do you want to handle it, where you want to move it to, and in all of that, making sure you can apply the same principles to it as you would do if you're working with data that's inside of the company versus on Amazon or Microsoft or something. Um, a day to day in that, again, cloud, cloud is another huge topic. So, there could be, tens and hundreds of different areas that you want to focus on. I can give you a perspective from what I've been doing with cloud, um, and probably general idea. And then, so thinking cloud, you're thinking most of the time it's moving and storing data. At the end of the day, it comes down to how secure is your data wherever it's going to be living, right? So you're sending messages, right, through a texting app, or you're uploading a video somewhere, right? You're typing up a document, a sensitive document. It's got to be stored somewhere, right? What's the sovereign body behind where this data is? How do they handle protecting that data? How do they handle, um, the user owning that data versus, the entity that's storing the data owning the data, right? So at the end of the day, I would say, for me, what I do with cloud is, so far, you know, from my company at least, we're ensuring that the data we have out in Amazon or out in AWS, wherever it's going to live, right? It's it's going to have to meet certain criteria as as uh, as a way of gauging, okay, how secure is it, and how comfortable are we with having that information where it's currently at, right? If we find that there's a gap or we have doubts in that, then we want to address that by applying, security to that. It could be coming a variety of different ways. From your applying, say, rule-based access controls, right? You're maybe, making sure you're blocking traffic from, other, locations in the world, other countries, and maybe only allowing your companies to access that data, based on where you're coming from. Um, it could be really anything. I would have to I would have to do I could do a whole presentation on just security and cloud data, but I, it's pretty much endless. That's the best way I can tell you. It's almost anything you can think of, right? And how you treat something on your personal computer is essentially the same, just that you're putting that information on somebody else's computer at the end of the day, because it belongs to Amazon now, right? Or Microsoft. Um, but yeah, you just have to find where in that you want to go. A cloud architect. You could be a cloud engineer, right? It could be, a variety of different ways you can go about doing that. Um, CompTIA and yeah, CompTIA has a good layout of that. So like if you try to look up, I think you can just Google their career path for like a cloud architect, right? It will pretty much give you like a nice list of where you would start out and like where you can potentially go to, right? So from like an analyst to a cloud practitioner, where you literally defining and building out your own cloud.
Yeah, so I think basically to sum that up, it was that with cloud, with cloud security or cloud computing and all of that space, it's pretty diverse. Just like trying to describe cybersecurity as a whole, cloud could be, you know, it could be a variety of different areas that you want to, pick from that. So, um, again, you got to find, what interests you the most, right? And from there, you can start exploring the options. I actually did write down a few sort of career paths or roles that I found interesting based on where I've been going, right? So when I started out, it was like a security analyst was where he started out as, right? and this is after like say doing like a help desk, and I call those are like the foundational, right? So then I went to like a security analyst, right? And from there I did some pen testing as part of security analyst. So I wasn't a pen tester, right, as a title, but I did pen testing as part of my role as a security analyst. Um, and then from there, I went into security engineering now. So where I'm now, maybe developing my own scripts or applications, right? To maybe I'm building some automations, automate some tasks, automate a process. And then from there is where I'm at now as like a security manager, where I'm, overall now with all the knowledge I've gained for the last, 5, 8 years, 10 years, I'm putting that all together now to solving the problem as a whole. Right. So how do we stop this data from leaving? Okay, we need to think about, what happens when the pen tester comes in, what will they see? Okay, then as the engineer, how can you fix the gap that they're seeing, right? And then presenting that to, the CISO and say, this is how we fix that problem, basically. So, that's sort of the path I took, in summary, to be where I'm at right now, and hopefully that will give you an idea of where you want to line up, based on which role you want to get into, where you want to land your next role, where you want to start off at, your next role you want to start off at. So hopefully that gives an idea of, the the different hops it takes me to get where I'm at now, and that should give you an idea of where I started, actually get an idea where you want to start, and then where you want to go.
So thank you for that. I have a question, but before I ask my question, I'm gonna ask if anybody else has questions. Nick, I think you were about to say something. Did you want to go ahead and
Oh,
say
no,
something?
I was just saying thank you for that.
Awesome.
I have one quick question.
Yeah.
As somebody in my position, like that's brand new to the IT field, let's say I'm going through a formal education process, going for my bachelor's. I do maybe like a year and a half through the university, maybe 2 years already. If I want to get into the field, into a security analyst, what's the expected pay range? Like, how much money am I looking at? As somebody that doesn't have experience but is now jumping into this field, that have like, let's say 2 years of experience, of formal education experience only, and I get into a position, into a company. What's the expected pay range?
So, and from the last time I looked at this, an analyst going into cybersecurity, I think what will weigh in on that a lot, is just demonstrating, what you can do, right? And you said you're like halfway through your bachelor.
No. I'm actually, because the thing is, in my case scenario, I have to do the certification course, the Google IT certification course,
Okay.
before I can enroll into the university, because I don't have prior college experience,
Okay.
education. So the Google IT certification course will give me college credits. So they want me to finish that in order so I can get those college credits in order for me to go for my bachelor's in cybersecurity. So that's the route that I'm in right now. So once I finish this course, which will be in the next month and a half the max, then I can start going to the university, to WGU, which is a Western Governors University, which is a fully online cybersecurity information assurance program. And then go from there and just continue taking the steps to go from there. But I'm trying to network right now through the process, as I do work for a healthcare industry for Anthem. So I'm trying to network with different people in the IT field, just so that I can get my name out there already. They can know who I am and so forth. So in the next couple of years, as I'm going through the process of my formal education, maybe I can already be in a in a role, while I'm still studying for my bachelor's.
Right. Yeah, and definitely that can happen. I think what a lot of companies do is, even to see that you're in process of doing it, right, is sometimes good enough for them. Um, I like I said, I think I mentioned that, in my bio, that, I landed my first, IT help desk role, right, when I was also starting out my bachelor's. So I was doing those simultaneously. Um, I think what would have helped me at that time is doing something like the Security Plus, which it I don't think there's a pre-requirement the last time I checked. At least nothing on paper that says like you have to have this other certification before you can take it. I think that's one that you can self-study. Take a shot at the exam, and that alone can set you in the door as like a security analyst one, or like an entry level security analyst. And especially now with how the market is, I think you can start out at a pretty good spot for being, somebody who's also pursuing a degree at the same time in that. Um, not saying you're going to be expecting the salary of like a neuroscientist or anything, right? But you know, typically, I've seen the range in that, and I've seen, I've had colleagues who right out of school, like, they graduate today and they start tomorrow. They drop them in the band of anywhere from like, 80 to in the upper 90s as just like a security analyst, right? Um, it's all gonna again depend on where you're looking, right? And what the market is like in that area. I actually, I actually interviewed with the NSA, and I got like 5 offers before I left because it was so crazy hot, the market at the time. But at the end of the day, you're looking to work for the government. They're not going to pay you as well as, a private company, right? So you have to think about all of that, and factor in, geographically where you're going to be, how the market is for cybersecurity there. Obviously, the more competition you have in that area, then salary is going to be more competitive too, right? So um, I would say, in a ballpark, you can expect to land somewhere in there, with just going in as like an entry level security analyst, for example. From there, you can easily, work your way up. By the time you're finished, then with your bachelor's, right, you're at another level already, right? So I think in general, at least from a 2 3 years ago, that's kind of how the market looked, right? Like when I was there. So hopefully that gives a good perspective.
Yeah, actually it does. Yeah, thank you for that.
So I will add to that, because that was a little bit of my question too, is now that's just starting out. So talk a little bit about, now you got a little bit of experience under your belt, you have the degree, maybe a couple certifications. What does that ballpark salary look like? And we all know obviously it's different from different industries and stuff, but what have you seen in your experience and in your industries?
Yeah. So again, I would say starting out, right? You got the fundamentals. You like a security analyst, like you're working your way up. You got a couple degrees. Yeah, well, I said a couple like it's casual. You have a degree and a couple of certifications. Let's put it that way. Degrees don't come by that easy. um, but once you're say at like a mid level, I think you can pretty much at some point you can pretty much sell yourself however you want, at that point. I think you know definitely after like something like a graduate or master's degree, or even before that, you can find yourself in any kind of managerial position. It could be a consultant manager. You may be security architect, and those are typically like lead or senior lead management type roles. Um, and from there, you're getting close to like CISO type, CISO type checks. So like you're looking anywhere from north of 180 all the way up to like the 400. So you're getting checks as big as the president at that point. But I think at that point though, it's really come down to just how much you sell yourself, how much experience you want to get under your buckle at that time. I would say the certifications at that point, like the more higher cert that you get at that point, like you're looking at like the CISSP, like the CISA, right? So now you could be like an auditor, right? Something of that sort. You can then, instead of say you're as an analyst or like a engineer, right? You're still working for the company, making money for the company, or relying on the profits for the company. But if you get to the point where you're like now a consultant manager, like you can sell your own service at that point, for example, right? Or if you're like a solutions architect, like you can sell your own service at that point, and that's then really where you can find yourself. You're writing your own checks because you're telling them how much you're worth and how much your service is worth at that point. So I would say starting out again, you're gonna find yourself, probably just below six figures in this current market. The moment you jump that border, right, you get over that line there, and you start to go to a mid to senior level, then it can really increase exponentially at that point, depending again on the area that you decided you want to go. So if you want to continue, I would say if you want to continue like the smoother route, which is maybe jumping from an analyst to a senior analyst, or then from there to an engineer, then you're going to expect a more linear type increase, right? But if you say you've been an analyst, you've got all the rounded knowledge of an analyst that you need to then become a solutions architect, and maybe you take like cloud architect certification, for example, right? That's one of them. Then at that point, you can expect Amazon or Microsoft to be calling you on a daily basis, because those are the type of people who are more unique. There's not a lot of those type of people, so you become more unique at that point in the field.
Awesome. Yeah, it's great that you're sharing that, because our last cybersecurity meetup, the range that we got was 80 to 120, right? And so one of the things that I was trying to tell folks is that that's just for the particular industry that my other contact was in. Now you're in pharmaceuticals, so obviously that looks different. And I think the main takeaway here is it varies from industry to location, wherever you are geographically, also as well to, ultimately supply and demand. I want folks to understand that, supply and demand plays a big role here. If I'm in a major corporation where there's 100,000 employees, like my previous contact, chances are that they're very structured in how you're going to get paid, right?
Right.
Versus if you're maybe in a smaller company where you're leading a smaller team and you are directly responsible for a lot of their systems that you're managing and architecting, all that stuff, you're going to get paid a lot more. So the situation is different. So keep that in mind.
Yep, you nailed it there. You know, I can personally, I can personally say that because I've been, I've had multiple companies, and I can tell you that the industry, the type of company that it is, it plays a huge part. I've done the same role in two different companies and seen a 40% different difference in salary just because one does it, one's a different industry. So
Wow.
it really comes down to the industry, where you want to go, both geographically and how the market is for that specific skill set, and how how in demand that skill set is. So if you want to be the standout, you want to go to the top where it's the really those are where you call it. I would describe as the really niche type of roles in cybersecurity. So like if you're like a bug bounty hunter, right? If you ever heard that term, like you literally go out and you find what's wrong with like all these big websites like Google. They have out hundreds and thousands of applications that they build and write. You find something wrong with an app that you can exploit. You're basically having them pay you to tell them how to fix it. And they're going to pay you at that point because now they know there's a huge gap out there that some real bad guys could take advantage of, right? Now they're stealing data, ransomware and everything that comes with that. So if getting up to that top where like you're getting into those really specific and unique skill set, that's obviously where you're going to see a huge difference in the pay gaps.
Awesome. Well, we got time for one last question. So I don't know if anybody has a great last question that they want to ask before we wrap up. Not everyone at once, please.
Go once or twice. I'll ask it. I'll ask one. All right. How's the family to work life balance as a cybersecurity in the field?
What work-life balance?
that answered my question. Thank you very much.
No, I mean, you'll find ways how you handle it. Oh, so let me say it, and I think this is for me one of the most important things, right? In what I do. At the end of the day, you can always find a company that's going to write you a seven-figure check, right? But like, at what cost is that going to come to, right? Are you gonna be spending 10 hours, 12 hours in the office, and you're basically sleeping in your car. By the time you wake up, you're going back in the building. It at the end of the day, it takes a toll, right? I can say, like, if you ever plan on becoming like a CISO, I don't know if that's you, Natasha, but if if you ever become like a CISO, I think those are the type of schedules CISO have, and from all the CISOs I work with, it's like they just don't stop, man. They don't have an off switch. Like, it's really hard to get them to slow down. So you should think about that too. What kind of work-life balance do you want? Is it worth taking a slightly lesser check for the equivalent of having a better life outside of work, right? Or if you're just on the grind and you just want to get that paper, man, like, while you have the energy, do it. I'm not going to tell you not to, because it can be nice, right? But at some point you're going to have to make that call, and for me, I'm sort of like 50-50 at the moment, because again, it's still, I think I'm still early in a lot of my career. There's other things that I like to do, so I'm trying to learn how to balance those out as I go. Figure that out as I go.
Can I
Well,
ask a question?
go.
If we have
Yeah.
time. If we have
No,
time.
go ahead, Nick. We got time.
So, yeah, regarding because I kind of want to elaborate piggyback off of what JC's question. So, like, it's regarding the work-life balance. Like, is there any activities or any tasks that need to be done after you've done your, you've done your 10 to 12 hours? Like, is there anything else that need to be done afterwards, like maybe admin work or anything like that?
That all comes down to the role that you're gonna pick. As an analyst, maybe not, because as analyst is one of the most I'd say probably one of the most popular, right, roles that you're gonna see out there. So you're gonna have a lot of people who are analysts at a company. Typically, most of the security team might be analysts, but then you have maybe an engineer or a few managers, right? It's going to come down to just how they run their security team. You might have a 24/7 SOC, right, what they call it, and that just means that you always have to have someone on call, ready to take action if something happens. You might not have that. In my case, we're having an outside, third party that does that, who's on a different time zone. So when it's night for us, it's daylight for them. They run the show. But if things go sideways one night, I might get a call and say, okay, this is really bad. Like, we need you. We need you on deck. But on a typical day, fingers crossed. Knock on wood. So far, that's never happened. Hopefully, it stays that way. But I've had jobs where I had to do both, where I'm on call, somebody ringing my phone at night. Turns out they just need to plug their computer in, some silly stuff like that. And, but yeah, it comes down to the company and the structure they have for whatever role you're going to be going in.
Awesome. So all great questions. Thank you everybody for your awesome questions, and a big thank you to Brandon for taking the time out to just speak with us, give us all this information that I wish I would have had when I started, and I'm sure he would probably say the same. So a huge thank you to him for that. Hey, welcome back. Hopefully you guys enjoyed the video with my friend Brandon, who gave out a lot of great information. It was a lot of good stuff in there. And as you heard him say, a lot of those people that were on the call, they had more information than what he had starting out. And so I think the biggest thing is learning from other people's experiences, so you don't waste time in starting whatever it is that you're trying to do. And especially in this situation, when you're trying to get into cybersecurity, you can lean off of his experiences, so that way you don't have to go and redo the same things that he did and waste time doing that. So if you enjoyed the video and you learned a thing or two, go ahead and hit the like button below. It helps out the channel. Also, it tells me that this is the type of content you guys want to actually see. Don't forget also to subscribe to the channel, because we post videos every single week on all things engineering, technology, and finance. And lastly, remember to share with family and friends. We don't want people to suffer in the sense that they're stuck in the same spot and they're just spinning their wheels, right? We want everybody to learn the information, be able to apply it, and transform their lives to be something a little better than what it is today. I love you guys. Take care, and we'll see you on the next video.